Howdy and happy Friday, everyone. Thanks for joining us as we continue our Texas A&M Virtual Campus Sustainability Month. Happy that you're here with us today. So for today, Jenny Jiang is going to talk to us about fast fashion. This is definitely a really interesting sustainability topic, something that impacts all of our lives. So this should be something that can apply to everyone who's interested in sustainability and just living a little bit more of a sustainable lifestyle. So before we get to that, I just want to go over some of kind of like the little ground rules that we have. So just some directions that we'd ask you to follow. So first, if you turn on side-by-side mode, it'll make your viewing experience much more enjoyable. So if you look to the right of the bar, there's an option to turn that on. You should also be able to turn on your subtitles if you want to watch that way. We ask that you keep your mics muted during the course of this presentation. At the very end, we'll have a time for a question and answer, so a discussion section. And what we'd ask you to do is if you have questions that come up, put those in the chat, write those down. And then when we get to the discussion section, I will ask whatever's in the chat. And also, if you want, you could just turn on your camera or you can unmute your mic and we could have a conversation that way. There's not a whole lot of us on the call, so that would be fine if you wanted to do that. You can also use the raise your hand feature and we can call on you. And a couple of things about the Office of Sustainability. Sustainability Champion Awards are open now. They open on Monday. And that's an opportunity for student, faculty, and staff all can be recognized. We give away 3 awards every year. Basically, like, what are you doing to make campus more sustainable? You could nominate yourself, or you can nominate your friends or a faculty or a staff member that you know is doing good work. Get them recognized. So please take advantage of that opportunity. Also, if you would like to be an intern, Jenny is actually an intern in our office currently. We're opening up our internship applications. Those open on Monday. You are please welcome to apply to those. We'll send out a campus-wide email. You can also check out our website and also our social media. And also, we realize you might want some of these prizes that we have for you. So let me just explain how you get those. So there's going to be a code word during the course of this presentation. Jenny might speak it. She might write it on a slide. I might write it in the chat. But pay attention. When you hear that code word, write it down. If you collect 2 code words, you get a water bottle. 3 would get you a t-shirt. 5 gets you the water bottle and the t-shirt. So you have multiple colors. Once you've compiled all the code words that you want to collect, just email them all at one time to sustainability@tamu.edu. And on 11/9 is when those are all going to be due. So you have some time to check those out. And I just wanted to point out that some of you have already completed some of your code words. You sent emails in. Right now, we're kind of sorting through all of those. Very busy as we manage this month. We have some others. Deadlines happening in the office, so we have been paying attention to those coming in. We're keeping track, and we will be in touch with everyone to be able to pick those up. Probably won't be until next week, or it could also be around this November 9th timeline, so we can try to do it all around the same time frame. But we will definitely keep track of that and let you all know when those are ready for pickup. So please be patient with us. And you will need to pick those up on the College Station campus. We can't ship those. And finally, you don't have to watch live. You can watch this later. We'll post it on the same page. It'll be a YouTube link. And we have all of the stuff that's already been done on our YouTube page. If you missed something, go check it out. We definitely appreciate the support. Tell your friends. With that, I'm going to stop sharing. Jenny's going to take over, and she's going to talk to us about fast fashion. So whenever you're ready, Jenny.
Okay, one sec. Can you guys see it?
Yes.
So howdy, my name is Jenny Jiang, and I'm a senior mechanical engineering major here at Texas A&M University. And today I'll be talking about fast fashion during the pandemic. So what exactly is fast fashion? Well, Merriam-Webster defines fast fashion as an approach to the design, creation, and marketing of clothing fashions that emphasizes making fashion trends quickly and cheaply available to consumers. Fast fashion makes trends more affordable for their customers. Examples of brands that participate in this action are Forever 21, H&M, Zara, Shein, and many more. They produce their clothing with cheap material or labor or both. They also tend to overproduce, so they end up with a lot more stock than needed. So why is this a problem? From a sustainability standpoint, fast fashion violates goals for all 3 pillars of sustainability. Social sustainability has a huge focus on labor rights and practices, decent working conditions, human rights, social responsibility and justice, and community development. Fast fashion tends to source their production in low-income countries because they tend to offer lower prices. This leads to workers being underpaid for the labor being done. Many times, these factories and warehouses don't provide the best working conditions either, so the workers are put into situations that may lead to many health concerns. On the environmental sustainability side, fast fashion goes against the goals of reducing waste, reducing pollution, maintaining healthy ecosystems, and protecting animals. By producing cheap products, the fast fashion industry tends to produce more than they need. This leads to a lot of waste, and something that also contributes to waste is the low quality of clothing being made. Lower quality products are more prone to rips and tears and are often thrown away after they're damaged. The factories produce a lot of pollution and also consume a lot of raw materials that could be put to better use. The pollution leads to the surrounding area's wildlife to suffer from bad air quality, and the factories itself take up space that could have been left for wildlife. Factors of economic sustainability that relate to this topic are consumption and use, labor, welfare, and distribution of wealth. The fast fashion industry has a lot of consumers, and they're attracted to fast fashion because of their prices for styles that are currently trending. However, like I said before, the quality of these items is exactly what you pay for, and there's a high likelihood of these items being used just a few times before throwing it out. By constantly buying cheap, on-trend articles of clothing, it actually wastes more money than buying a few good quality basics that don't go out of style. There's a huge labor force that works for the fast fashion industry in places such as Bangladesh in India and Grimethorpe in England. The distribution of wealth across the supply chain is highly uneven. These brands are paying for cheap production, but that also means the factories and warehouse workers don't get distributed very much money. They're underpaid, but are forced to continue working to provide a living for their families. So now that you have a general idea of what fast fashion is, I'm going to go into ways that COVID-19 has affected the fashion industry. Clothing sales went down about 34% in March when the pandemic started to pick up its pace. Very few people have been shopping in person, and many retailers had to close their doors due to a large loss of profits. H&M announced that 70% of their stores globally were closing. In place of shopping in person, many brands have turned to online shopping. Loungewear sales have increased approximately 70% since lockdown first began because everyone's working from home and looking for more comfy clothing options. The fashion industry produces about 1.2 billion tons of CO2 per year, and they should take this time in quarantine to rethink their values. Many people are starting to realize the harms that can come from fast fashion, so there's a large portion of consumers that are looking for more sustainable options. However, be aware of greenwashing. This is when a company claims to be more sustainable than they actually are. They attract more buyers by marketing themselves to be greener, but in reality, there are problems still untreated, such as distributing the wealth to the earlier stages of the supply chain and making sure everyone in the supply chain works in good conditions. Brands tend to buy months in advance in order to stay relevant and on trend. However, because of the cycle of trends, they end up having to sell these items on sale. In fact, there have been a significant amount of discounts to get rid of excess stock of trends that may go out of style soon. The pandemic has affected many factories and warehouses because brands started canceling shipments they had already placed, even when all the work was completed. Factories either destroy or keep unwanted goods and lay off workers because of their lack of profit. Many workers who lose their jobs don't have any social or financial safety nets, so they're left in more poverty. Compensation has been given to workers in Bangladesh, but only up to 1 month's worth of salary. Some are given nothing. A lot of brands give retail and office workers compensation, but little or none are given to the other workers in their supply chain. The pandemic has made it very clear the divide between big brands and developing economies. On the other hand, some factories have actually ramped up their production due to higher demands in online shopping. This has led to many employees starting to speak out about the cruel conditions they're working under. Some workers at ASOS have revealed that they feel like rats and have started to nickname the warehouse a cradle of disease. ASOS did the opposite of most companies, and instead of shutting down or limiting worker capacity, they've increased operations at their Barnsley location. Their German warehouse may have shut down, but that led to all of the orders being transferred to their Barnsley site. Hundreds of extra staff have been taken on to get their million per weekend orders fulfilled. They have reported no social distancing, same lunch breaks, and large amounts of people in small areas. One worker even said, if one worker gets coronavirus, all warehouse workers, over 3,000 of them, will get it. We're not key workers, we're just used for profit. These accusations were denied by the chief executive, and the reason these workers haven't left the warehouse is because they need to have income, especially in times like these. One worker said, "Why am I still here? I can't live on 94 pounds per week. I can't help my family with that. Making money to live is more important than being healthy right now." Some employees from Boohoo spoke out as well, and they're claiming that they are working so close to each other that they are breathing in each other's faces due to lack of space. One person said, "They think we are essential because people need clothes, but that's not the case. They keep putting sales on to boost their sales, and that's not looking out for people, that's just rubbing salt on the wound." Amazon workers in New York went on strike and claimed insufficient safety precautions after some of the workers tested positive. These brands are putting profit over human rights. So on the bright side, many brands have donated money towards coronavirus research, such as Giorgio, Armani, and Gucci. Companies have stepped up to start producing masks to make up for the shortage we had at the start, and now you can find masks on almost every brand's website. The pandemic has also allowed these brands to pause their normal production and think about ways to turn the fashion industry around. So there are many things you can do to help slow down the fast fashion industry. Ask yourself this question: who made my clothes? Demand for fashion brands to distribute their wealth along the supply chain to protect their workers, and demand for them to change. Pictured on the right is a hierarchy for clothing that shows the most sustainable things to do to the least. The best thing you can do is use what you have and don't buy any clothes. After that comes borrowing or swapping. Ask your friends or family if they'd like to participate in this with you. I myself have borrowed clothing from my roommates and friends. The next best thing you can do is thrift, and that's actually the code word for this presentation. It's thrift. So this can actually be really fun. You're basically shopping, but for clothes that are lightly used, that someone figured another person would get more use out of it. After that comes buying sustainably. This can be really hard because there's only a handful of companies that are actually fully sustainable and also affordable. Sustainable brands tend to come with a higher price because they're distributing their wealth across the supply chain from beginning to end, and they're also using more expensive materials to provide high-quality products that'll last longer than fast fashion items. The least sustainable thing you could do is to buy clothing from these fast fashion brands. Now, I'm not trying to shame anyone for participating in fast fashion. I'm a college student and I understand the attraction of buying on-trend clothing for affordable prices. And I can't say that I'm perfectly sustainable, a perfectly sustainable shopper. But after doing the research for this presentation, I've learned about a lot of ways to improve myself. Something you can do to help slow down the amount is to slow down the amount of shopping you do. Unsubscribe to all those emails you get from brands and unfollow them on social media so the temptation is reduced. Make sure that if you buy from fast fashion brands, you're really thinking about how much use you'll get out of it and if it's good quality. Personally, I have bought clothing in the past from fast fashion brands that are still holding up perfectly and that I still get a lot of use out of. Just make sure you're not buying something that will only be worn once before you don't want it anymore. Take care of your clothing to ensure that you don't damage it before it can get a lot of use. And start shopping on online thrift services. There's a lot of options nowadays, so it makes it easier to try to change your habits. And again, the code word for this presentation is thrift. So I found this website called Good on You, where you can actually look up different brands and see how sustainable they are. It's been really interesting to look up all the brands of clothing that I have shopped at before. And Good on You rates brands on a scale of we avoid to great. And they even go into depth about the reasons for their ratings and sometimes include articles and proof. And you can also see the levels that these brands treat plants, people, and animals. So on this slide, I've included brands to stay away from, more sustainable brands, and many thrifting options. The more sustainable options are brands that I looked into that were fairly affordable compared to other sustainable brands. Although Adidas does participate in fast fashion, they're probably the athletic brand that's making the most strides towards a sustainable future. Just make sure to filter items by using their tab named Sustainability. 10 Trees is a brand that plants 10 trees for every product purchased. A lot of these thrifting options are ones I use myself pretty frequently. A Goodwill can be found in almost every city. Savers, I think, is in Austin. Look up local thrift stores. In College Station, there's a new one called Uptown Cheapskate, and other ones include Plato's Closet and Sweet, Repeat, and Resale. Curtsy, Poshmark, and Depop are apps that you can use to actually buy and sell clothes on. So this way you can give the clothes you don't wear anymore to someone else that would use it more and even earn money. So that's the end of my presentation. Here are my sources, and if there are any questions, I'll open the floor.
All right, thank you so much, Jenny. That was a very illuminating presentation. Learned a lot about fast fashion and hadn't really thought about it in relation to COVID-19 and what has or hasn't changed. So that was really interesting information. And thinking about COVID-19 and that you were talking about the ASOS factory, and I was wondering, could you just tell us who is that? Who does that factory make clothing for?
Well, ASOS is the brand. So it's located in Barnsley, and I think they're worldwide shipping. So all of their million per weekend orders goes out to people across the world. And because they had to shut down another warehouse, all of these shipments are coming from this one factory, so they had to increase workers there.
Okay. Oh, okay. So ASOS is actually like a fast fashion brand.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I was a little confused on that. Thanks for clarifying that. And then I wanted to ask you, you showed us your kind of like the how you would make a purchase, you know, how you would kind of think through that. And you showed us like a hierarchy.
Mm-hmm.
If you were to think about that hierarchy and the information that you presented, and we have Halloween, you know, coming up here at the end of the month, how would you go about purchasing, you know, or creating your Halloween costume kind of based on the information that you've shown in this presentation?
So I would say to get a little crafty with the clothing you already have. There are a lot of ways to just modify articles of clothing to become a costume. And other ways are to actually thrift those costumes. I've seen Goodwill sell a lot of costumes, and I've seen those thrifting apps like Curtsy and Poshmark also selling used costumes or even new costumes that no one opened and they're just trying to get rid of. So I think that's a good way to approach that.
Great, thank you. And you mentioned online thrifting. Was it those apps that you just said? Could you
Hmm.
repeat those again?
Yeah. Oops. So the ones on the right, ThredUp is like a huge thrift store online. They take pictures of each article of clothing, and you can actually send in some of your clothes too, and earn a little bit of money back. But this is a great way, and actually my entire outfit right now is from ThredUp. So you can get work clothes and athletic wear, literally anything off of ThredUp, and so can Depop, Curtsy, and Poshmark are all apps that you can use to sell and buy clothing.
All right, great. Thank you for the advice. And obviously, from looking at your outfit there, you can get really nice clothes and look very professional with using these apps. So Jenny is
Yes.
proof right there. You can see her proof right on the screen. Um, and then I guess other thing I wanted to ask you about is, you showed us that image of all those unwanted goods, and you said that they were destroyed. How do they typically destroy those? Do you know?
I don't I don't remember reading about how they destroy them, but I've heard in the past that they'll just burn items. I'm hoping that they would just recycle them, but since they're already made, I don't know how that would work. Um, so yeah, I don't know how they would go about destroying them. They'd probably either throw them away or burn them, is what I'm thinking.
So in your research, it said that the items were destroyed. It didn't talk about them being repurposed very often.
Yeah. Mm-mm.
Okay. So that seems like an awful huge waste of resources, obviously. All right. And then I also wanted to just ask you a little bit. Could you expand just one thing that I thought was really interesting was how you frame this issue in terms of the three pillars of sustainability, the environmental, the economic, and the social. So I'm wondering, like, as you have learned more about these three pillars of sustainability, how has that kind of changed the way that you have looked at, how you're going to go about, with your fashion, purchasing your fashion?
Yeah, so I never really thought super deep into my purchases, but um, now after doing all this research, when I look at an item, I think about the early stages of the supply chain for that item and where it came from, the economy that they're coming from, and the conditions they're working under. And it's just not something I want to support because it is a huge issue. And I feel like coronavirus has probably made it worse for lower income economies. Um, so I've kind of just thought more into depth about the supply chain now of clothing, which I never really had in mind.
And then would you say that you could also apply that same kind of logic to other purchases that you might make, not just the clothing?
Yes, for sure. Places like Five Below will produce really cheap goods, but will break really fast, or even dollar store. I mean, sometimes you can get great items, not trying to bash on them, but like items that you think you'll only use once is kind of a waste. And cheap items on Amazon and other cheaper purchases, it may be worth the investment to look into something a little more high quality and more expensive.
And then also, like you mentioned during the presentation, that you didn't want to, shame anyone. Not everyone is obviously able to afford some of these brands. Something we talked about earlier, sometimes there's barriers to being, sustainable. But you also showed us that there's other ways that you can be sustainable on a budget, which is mostly revolving around thrifting. And I guess I also wanted to ask, if someone does purchase some fast fashion goods or has fast fashion goods in the past, like what can they do with those goods, I guess, to be, sustainable, as sustainable as they can based on kind of their situation.
I would say definitely to take care of your clothing on how you wash them. Make sure you're washing them correctly so you don't shrink them so you can't wear it anymore or stain them. I would just say take care of the clothing because they may be lower quality if they're from fast fashion brands, but I have had clothing that I've bought in middle school from fast fashion brands, not knowing anything about fast fashion, that I still use to this day. So it's about how long you can make an item last and how well you take care of those items.
Great, yeah, thank you. And that kind of just makes me think about that. If you have a bunch of items in your closet and you're feeling like you want to be sustainable, so you have to buy these sustainable brands, it's actually less sustainable to throw all your clothes away and buy new clothes that you don't necessarily need. So using them until the end of their life and using them as long as you can, you're still being as sustainable as you can be in your current situation. So I just think that that's something important that people should know. And before we end this talk, we do have a question in the chat. Someone would like to know, what is your favorite sustainable brand?
So I don't think I've actually shopped at any of these sustainable brands. Um, but I do thrift a lot through Curtsy, and I sell a lot of my clothes through Curtsy. But one of the sustainable brands that interests me the most is Change. And Ben actually has an article of clothing from Change, and he really likes it and was hyping it up to me. But they also have quotes on their t-shirts. They're kind of like a graphic t-shirt company that has quotes for social justice and environmental justice written on these articles of clothing, and they're made with really good quality. Ben can tell you more about that.
Yeah, good segue. So yeah, Change, they have a lot of good messaging, very social justice oriented, as Jenny just said, and also see a lot of environmental things, messages on their clothing. But they are 100% like organic cotton. They're made sustainably so that the people along the supply chain are paid fairly. And they're also just really high quality. Like if you look at the images online, it might look like screen printed, but everything's actually stitched on their clothing. So yeah, just one option if you wanted to, purchase something and support a good cause. So with that, I think that's all the questions that we're going to have today in the chat. So thank you so much, Jenny. That was definitely a really interesting. Actually, I guess I have one final question. So when you look at these apps, the Poshmark, Curtsy, Depop, I know that it's typically a marketplace where women's clothing is being sold. Do you know if men's clothing is also sold on these apps, or if there's something in particular that's more geared towards that?
I think ThreadUp and Poshmark are really good men's options. I've looked into buying clothing for my friends that are men. So Poshmark is definitely a place where you can find men's clothing. I think Depop as well. Curtsy is more geared towards women, so.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you. I have some clothes I need to sell, so I'm trying to get some tips. All right, so now that's everything we're going to go over for this presentation. Thanks y'all for joining us. I'm just going to quickly share my screen and just show you what we got coming up next. So just do that real quick. So what we have coming up next is actually today at 5 p.m. Paige Worth, she's the educator intern in our office. She's going to give a talk about the sustainability of disturbances. So that's a topic that I've never heard discussed before. So I really encourage people to check that out and learn more about that. And then on Monday, we have a bunch of stuff coming on Monday. We have 3 different events. Dr. John Nielsen Gammon, he's the state climatologist. He's also a professor on campus. He's going to talk about how the past is not normal, and he's really looking at issues of climate change. And then the Carolyn Ask from the city of College Station, she's in charge of their recycling services. She's going to give a talk about recycling. And then the interns and Jenny will be back here again on Monday at 6 p.m. Are going to go over this documentary or a quick video called The Story of Scuff and facilitate a conversation around that. So please join us later today and then on Monday. And you can see here the code word for this presentation is thrift. Jenny's already told you that, so I'll just give you a quick reminder there. But thanks so much for tuning in. We hope you all have a great rest of your weekend, and we hope to see you all later today. Take care, everyone.